I'm Alan, and my story is about a famous bunny.
I'm Darren, and I have a story that's most un-Canadian. Is un-Canadian a word?
Yes, it is. It is now. Hi, I'm Gina, and my story will leave you crying for more and perhaps a little drunk.
What does all this have to do with the word hop? Find out in this episode of History Bluffs. Hello and welcome to another episode of History Bluffs. It's where truth is stranger than fiction. My name is Adam, your host, and I say it's time to get this show on the road. Let's do this. This is our episode about hop. My name is Adam, your host, and this is History Bluffs. It is a history-themed comedy game show that is aired weekly live-streamed, and we are well past 100 episodes. We're old hat at this, but just in case you're not, I'm going to tell you how this goes. But first, we have, of course, our historians. I'd like you to meet them. We have Alan over here, Darren, and Gina. Welcome, guys. How you doing? All right, so hop is our story. I hope you each have a wonderful story from history about hop. But here's the thing. Here's the thing. For those of you who are new to the show concept, two of them are going to have real stories about history that is going to teach you something really cool and interesting. One of them is bluffing, completely bluffing. So that is part of the game, but of course is a game show, so there's a couple more rules about it. So let me give you a couple other rules that I'm going to check off here, just so you know exactly how the game is played. So the historians are all inspired by a topic. Our topic this time for this show is hop. And like I said, two of the stories are factual. One story is a bluff. And no audience help is allowed in the comments because this is an internet show. You could be knowledgeable about the topic and know whether or not you're bluffing. So we don't want you to help out and spoil the surprise because the game is, of course, about being surprised by who's bluffing. So now the bluff, whichever one of you it is, and I know who it is, and I'm not saying who it is. So there's going to be a big reveal at the end, but whoever it is, most of your story has to be a complete bluff. Now, of course, we acknowledge that things like the moon is real, North America is a continent, so you can't, of course, make up a completely fantastical story. There will be elements of reality, and that's allowed, but your main narrative must be a bluff. And the historians who are telling true stories, you have to say, of course, the actual story. You cannot embellish it or distort it because this is also an educational show. We expect folks to learn something from this show. So with that, let's see, Alan, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I'm ready to roll.
Okay, Alan's ready to roll. Darren, are you ready to hop, roll, or twist, shout?
Hop, roll, twist, and shout, just like the Beatles.
Love it. Awesome. And Gina, are you also ready to get out there, get out of your Warren den and hop through this history lesson?
I am. However, I'm not going to get up out of my chair or I'll be away from my microphone. But either way, I'm ready.
Very good. We are bound by the laws of physics in this internet streaming show. Let's see. So what we're going to do is we're not just going to tell you the stories like a lecture style. We're going to do it in three rounds. As a matter of fact, I'm going to bring up the amazing Round Tracker 9000. Let me get that queued up here. For those of you who can see, there is now above me a beautiful round tracker. For those listening on the audio podcast, you can't see it. Just imagine the most amazing effects you've ever seen. So, wow. And each round will be timed. The first round is 75 seconds. The second round is 60 seconds. And then the third round, where the stories have to finish up, is only 45 seconds. It's going to go fast. Now, between those rounds, each time we hear a little bit of the story, we're going to go back to the historians, and they'll be able to dissect and try to find the holes and gaps and suss out a bluff, if you will. And they can make accusations, but the reveal is not until the end. Are you ready, historians?
Ready.
All right, the historians are ready. We are going to round number 1. All right, round number 1. The rounds again are 75 seconds. That's a minute and 15 seconds for those of you not doing math. I can do that for you. So I'm going to do them the order in the order of my column. Alan, you happen to be on top, so you have the pleasure or challenge of going first. So your round one, inspired by hop, let's see where you go with this, begins right now.
Yes, it is the topic of hop, and when I think of hop, I think of bunnies, and I decided to go into a bit of an origin story about the most famous bunny, which is Bugs Bunny. Now, originally, the character Bugs Bunny was not the character that we know today. His early appearances were a bit less anthropomorphic and more rabbit-like. Also, his voice resembled Woody Woodpecker, including his famous laugh commonly associated with Woody. And it wasn't until multiple episodes that Bugs's name and voice were solidified. Now, Bugs Bunny is named after George Washington Banks, whose nickname was Bugs. Bugs Banks. And he was originally from the Bronx, and Mel Blanc's voice for Bugs Bunny was inspired by Banks. Mel Blanc has referred to the accent as a Flatbush accent, which is a combination of both Brooklyn and the Bronx. Now, don't ask me to tell you the difference because I don't know it from hearing it. But George, or rather Bugs Banks, was a custodian in the Warner Brothers Animation Studios. And when recording the audio for Happy Rabbit, I'm going to continue this in the next round.
All right. We'll hear more in the next round. So with you done, that lights up one dot on our round tracker. But before we move on to the next story, let's get some consensus. We have two other historians to hear from. Gina, what's your take so far on Alan's story about the Bugs Bunny?
He left us hanging right there, literally. So this is fun for those of you out in the world. The difference between a Bronx accent and or dialect and a Brooklyn one is one of the words is toilet. So Bugs Bunny says toilet as turlet, and if you say it the other way, it's true. This is I'm telling you some facts, some facts here. But anyway,
Wow. Okay.
So
So
There's
which
just a
one
couple
says
of subtle
toilet and
differences.
which one says
Brooklyn,
turlet?
Brooklyn says toilet. Bronx says toilet. So
Interesting.
that's
Okay.
just one of the differences. Anyway, okay, so then that part is plausible. However, I am not so sure because I always thought it was Mel Blanc from the beginning. So I'm intrigued by this, but I can't picture how it would have gone from ha 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 ha, ha to who cares, that kind of thing. So I'm interested to see. Let's see how it goes.
All right. Thanks for that input. Darren, how's the score? What are you feeling?
He did leave us hanging, much like an Acme brand anvil would hang in midair for a little while before it plummets to earth.
That's true. The suspense could kill us. But we're in cartoon land, so it wouldn't at all. So, all right. Thank you for that input. A little bit of going back and forth between the historians. So now we're going to go to our next historian. It's going to be a whole different story inspired by hop. So Darren, I'm going to put you in the hot seat, and we're going to hear a whole new story from history about hop starting right now.
Night fight. We fight at night. Me. He is after me. Pat sat. Pat sat on a hat. Pat cat. Pat sat on a cat. Hop pop. We like to hop. We like to hop on top of pop. Stop. You must not hop on pop. Those, of course, are words from the noted troublemaker and environmental terrorist Theodore Geisel, a.k.a. Dr. Seuss. But was he a real doctor? No, he wasn't. And though more well known for his landmark manifesto, the Lorax, and the invention of the most despicable stealer of Christmas since Krampus, Hop on Pop, written in 1963, is widely considered to be one of his most controversial and violent works. Hop on Pop is a call to arms, inciting children everywhere to ignore authority figures like their parents, to literally assault their fathers by hopping on pop. And that is why, in 2014, the Toronto Public Library Commission responded to public outcry to remove this book from the shelves.
Whoa. It's getting rambunctious up in this library. Wow. I thought you were having a medical issue at the top, I'll be honest.
I was, actually.
All right. Okay, looks like we got some Dr. Seuss in the game. Alan, what's your thoughts on this entry with hop?
We're banning children's library books. Is this Canada or Florida? I don't know. What are we talking about here? That's amazing. And Dr. Seuss wasn't a doctor? I'd have to
Don't
check
have him
sources
operate on
that.
your spleen. I'm just saying.
Okay. Well, I mean, he doesn't have to be a medical doctor, but you can still call him a doctor. He could have a PhD. I was guessing. I didn't assume he was a medical doctor, but I don't know.
All right. Gino, where's this going with Hop on Pop?
Well, this is the third week in a row where Darren started slow and he started to tell us a story that was more of a lorry. And it was all, it took a little bit of time because it was all in rhyme. And so I have to say here in my home that I am calling him out for the third week of a poem.
Wow.
Nice.
But I would also like to say that Dr. Seuss also got his start in Manhattan, another borough of New York. So this is a very cool little. I know this is great. So I don't. That actually all does sound exciting and fun, and I am I am moved by his story because I do feel like Dr. Seuss, the environmental terrorist, is getting a raw deal from Toronto. That's kind of rude. I love Hop on Pop. I did try to hop on my pop until I made him pop. That was what that instigated for me. So so maybe Darren's onto something. So is Toronto.
Okay, so some elements of known fact, but some also a lot of details surrounding. So, and that's kind of how the bluff story could work if Darren's bluffing, or if it's true, it's so fantastical that we think it's false. That's the game, folks. That's how it works. Okay. So we've got 2 dots lit up on the round tracker for round 1. There's only one person to go left, and Gina, that's you.
Okay.
So we're going to hear your whole yet other story inspired by Hop for round 1. It begins right now.
I am inspired by the word hops, and I will get to that in a moment. A couple named Bill and Lila lived in Texas, and while they were there, they decided to clean out the attic one day, and while they were going through it, they came across a big box of old records. And they thought, a lot of them, because they lived in Texas, so they were ruined by the heat, but there were some that were still good. So they decided before they decided, do we keep them? Do we throw them away? They decided to listen to them. And what they came across was an old acetate recording, a demo tape, actually. And so they placed it on, and a song came through, and it made Bill start crying. So Bill said, we can't get rid of this. And he said, in fact, I know what I have to do. He took the acetate record. He called up a gentleman named Henry, and he says, please come to Texas. I have something for you. I would like you. I cannot tell you what it is, but when you get here, I will. And I think you'll really love it. So Henry took a plane, flew down to Texas. And when he got there, Bill handed him the acetate record. They placed it onto a phonograph, played it, and Henry started crying as well. What it was, I will tell you in the next round.
What? You're going to leave us there with seconds to spare? See what I did there? Okay.
This is not normal, but I just figured I would tease it out a little bit. Fun, right?
That's good. That's good. Okay. All right. So we have Texas acetate. Darren, what's your thoughts?
I'm pretty sure this is the real life story behind that scene in Ghost with Patrick Swayze.
Yes. Everybody's crying.
Yeah,
crying, making pots. It's great. We'll all have a good hug about it. Alan, are you ready for arts and crafts about this? What are you doing?
Well, it's a good question because my grandmother had some ceramic records, and those wouldn't be affected by heat. Oh yeah, but the vinyl, of course, could melt. I don't know what an acetate record is. Is that like the old cylinders that Edison used, or what? What is this?
It's basically when they would record demos. It was what they recorded demos on in the 50s and 60s.
Okay.
Like a more durable master.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. That
Interesting.
makes sense. Okay, so it could track. It sounds like it might be a thing. All right, very
then
good.
I can give you a hint that this was recorded in the 50s.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, save it for round 2, which is right up next because we are done with round 1. All of the dots are filled up, which means it's time to go. Buckle up for round number 2. Round 2. The times are shorter, the stories are established, and we're going to keep on rolling in with them. So, Alan, that brings us right back around to you. So we're going to return to your story, which is about, let's see, I guess it's not...
Bugs Bunny.
It's Bugs Bunny. That's right.
Yeah.
Which I lost my... There it is.
It's okay.
I found it. No,
He's
we're
on a
all good.
cartoon, Adam. He's from Warner Brothers. Okay, are you with us now? Caught up?
I'm with it now. All right. I'm good to go. Are you ready, Alan?
I'm ready.
Round 2 begins right now.
So Gina's right. It was Mel Blanc from the very beginning. It's just the voice was evolving. So the voice that was in those original cartoons is not the voice that we came to know Bugs Bunny as having. So when Mel Blanc was recording the audio for Happy Rabbit, Mel Blanc heard George Banks, Bugs Banks, striking up a conversation with a producer who is on break, and Mel approached George and asked him to repeat his story. Mel was so tickled by George's delivery that he used the voice in the recording and suggested to the director that they name the character Bugs after George's nickname. His definitive design was created in 1943 by Bob Clampett, who requested one of his animators, Bob McKimson, to create new model sheets of Bugs for the short Tortoise Wins by a Hair. Bugs' defined look would be adapted each unit slowly, and Bugs' look was modified again many years later in 2011.
Okay, wow. All right, a lot more details there. We can continue picking this apart. What say you, Gina? What are your thoughts on where we're at?
Clearly a lie because the rabbit, the hair does not evolve slowly. The hair is the fast one. So the evolution could not have been slow by the sheer fact that it was a rabbit. Liar. Okay, bluff.
Okay,
bluff.
wow.
I call bluff.
Wow, there we go. It's an accusation of bluffing.
Yes.
Look out, Alan.
Wow.
Darren, are you feeling the same way, or is this track for you?
A little bit. I mean, it's a shame Carlos isn't here to
Yeah.
hear me accuse Alan of little Kaiser Sosa. But I feel like Alan was watching the Beverly Hillbillies earlier when he talked about Bob Clampett.
Nobody else.
In my story.
Nobody. Yeah, right.
Wow. Well,
That's true. His name is
Maybe
Bob
it's not a
Clampett.
shame Carlos isn't here.
You know,
It's
I guess
always a
it
shame.
rolled right off of me because I'm thinking like back in that. I don't know. It just Clampett seemed like a realistic name. I don't know.
And
But
this
I
is
am
in
impartial.
1943, so maybe the Beverly Hillbillies were inspired by this guy from Warner Brothers.
Maybe they were.
Good rebuke
Maybe
there,
art
Alan.
imitates life.
That is a good rebuke, and we'll have to see where that goes. Nice dropping
Well played.
some breadcrumbs of potential truth. So that takes us now to Darren. So Darren, we're going to get you up for round number 2. Looking forward to some more pentameter with Hop on Pop.
You'll be disappointed.
No, that's true. All right. Well, here we go forth nonetheless. You're on.
Okay, so to be fair, when I said a public outcry, it was from a single library patron who asked the library's material review committee to pull Hop on Pop because of the book's, quote, violent themes. The complaint was that it was violent and encouraged children to be violent with their fathers, says Vickery Bowles, the Toronto Public Library's Director of Collections Management, as she told to CTV News Channel. The patron recommended the book be removed and requested the Toronto Public Library not only apologize to Greater Toronto Area fathers, but pay damages resulting from the book's violent message. The book was ultimately retained by the Toronto Public Library Children's Collection after members of the review committee decided that the book was designed to engage children and that the story actually advises children against hopping on their fathers. Bowles said the committee reviewed the book based on its content as well as the reputation of its author, Theodore Seuss Geisel, who won a special Pulitzer Prize for his contribution to the education of young children.
Wow.
So they rejected the request for it to be banned.
Very good.
Did-
All
did
right.
they- but did they pull his Pulitzer?
Oh, come on. All right. That's...
Unknown.
Oh God.
Jeez. Did they pee on his Peabody? No, I'm not. That's, all right.
Not that kind of show.
I retract that. Not that kind of show. Alan, you are pensively staring into the abyss. What's your thoughts on
I'm
the
just
hopping
trying to
and
think,
popping?
but the fact that this book wasn't banned from children's libraries mean this is definitely not a story that took place in Florida. So now we know.
Right. Yeah.
It's
That's
Canada.
fair. Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was
They
Canada.
both end in A. That's it.
Yes. Slightly different climates.
Yes. For now.
Too soon.
Too soon. By 25 years. All right. Gina, what do you...
Enough. It's a lot of fluff, but I still don't 100% know if Darren is the bluff.
Oh, that was a nice wrap
Good.
up there.
I like that. Beautiful.
Yeah, thank
1
you.
point
All
for
right.
Gina.
Thank
All right. Well, let's move on. We've got two dots filled, which means, Gina, you are going to complete the second round here with your second
Oh, okay.
bit
Everybody
of
has
your
gone.
story. Your story, again, is about fight night, something in Texas acetate. I don't know. We're going to find out. Your round 2 begins right now.
The Bill that I mentioned in the first story is Big Bill Lister. He was a country singer in the 50s, and sometimes he would actually record things with a gentleman named Hank Williams. And the song that was on this acetate record had actually been the only recording of Hank Williams singing that particular song, A Tear in My Beer. If you all have ever heard it, it's a cute little like kind of old country song that Bill Lister had recorded. When he found it, he called Hank Williams Jr.'s son, Hank Williams Jr.'s son, Hank Williams Jr., and invited him, and he showed him the record and let him listen to it. And then he encouraged Hank Williams to actually bring the record back to Nashville, work with some producers, and perhaps even maybe redo the track. And that is exactly what he did. So when Hank Williams Jr. got back to Tennessee, he actually relayed the track. But what was interesting is what I will tell you in the next story.
Again, Gina running the clock out with some extra time.
I know.
That's so
Okay.
rare for Gina.
This is the first show ever in my life.
All right, let's get some feedback before we completely close out the round. Darren, where are we at with this? How you feeling about Gina's story?
I'm confused because so far Gina's done 2/3 of her story and there's not been a murder.
Wait. There's so
Off
much
brand.
to come.
There's so much to
one
come. There's
more.
45 seconds to come.
There's 45 seconds left, so we'll see what happens. But also, I've never heard the song "A Tear in My Beer," but I did hear the Hank Williams song "There's Hail in My Ale." And so,
Is that real? Is that a real song?
Yeah. There's hail in my ear. There's hail in my bale as I'm crying over you.
yeah.
No, it's actually not how it
familiar.
goes. It's not a song.
Oh, it's not.
Okay, come on. All right.
That was a
that's-
bluff.
That was
All right.
a bluff.
All right, but Alan, that little quip was a bluff, but what do you think about Gina's story?
Yeah, I think that's interesting. Hank Williams Sr. recording an unknown recording, and then Hank Williams Jr. Remastering it. That's an interesting story too.
Yeah.
But is it true or is it a bunch of bull Sevis?
Oh, because I get it.
Hank
Williams Jr.'s
Jr.
name.
reference there.
I
His
missed
name
it
is
completely.
Bocephus. His name is Bocephus. He's named after Alexander the Great's horse.
Oh, okay. I didn't know
Is
the
that-
origin of that. I just know that.
We're-
I'm
we
chock
are-
full of trivia tonight.
There's so many
Wow.
facts to check at the end of the show after we know who's bluffing. All right. Well, I think, it is true, all of these dots for round 2 are filled, which can only mean we go to the final round. It is round number 3. Round 3 is upon us, and this is the lightning round. Only 45 seconds to close your stories to a completion point so that we can then vote on who the bluff is. So, as we did with the last 2 rounds, Alan, we're going to begin with you and your final round of only 45 seconds. This is about Bugs Bunny.
Yes.
Let's hear the rest of it right now.
All right. Side note: Tortoise Wins by a Hair had a closing scene where Bugs Bunny tricked the tortoise to dress up, or was tricked by the tortoise to dress up as yet another tortoise to help with wind resistance. He was halted from crossing the finish line by rabbit thugs that he himself had hired to stop the tortoise. And in the original ending, the rabbits say, "Oh, now he tells us," when he reveals that he was the rabbit the whole time, and they commit suicide to their heads with handguns. And it was edited out of broadcast in the late 1980s. Bugs Banks was a fan of the cartoons, but did tell people that Mel Blanc never quite got his voice right, and he had been a recluse and never agreed to do on-camera interviews. Bugs Banks passed away in 1963, but his legacy lives on in Bugs Bunny, and Mel Blanc is also no longer with us as of 1989.
That applause is not for losing Mel Blanc. That
No,
is for the
no,
closing
I'm
of
sure
your
it's not.
story.
Yes,
Okay,
yes,
very
yes.
good. Okay, so there we have it. That's the closing of that, and it's about the tortoise and the hare. What do we think, guys? Gina, we'll start with you. Feedback?
I mean, he won me over when he said rabbit thugs, if I'm being honest. I love rabbit thugs that he arranged that didn't know it was him because he was in disguise. However,
As the tortoise.
However,
Yes.
I don't believe that they committed suicide. I just don't. So I'm not with like actual guns. So
Wow.
this is not. I got to hear the rest of Darren's story to make a real
Yeah.
fertile.
Okay,
fertile
all right, that's
judgment.
fair. We'll have time to make more frontal judgments. Darren, were you feeling
No,
it?
no,
this-
fertile
fertile
judgment.
judgment.
Fertile
Okay.
judgment. I've got another semi-Kaiser Sosa accusation of.
Okay.
I'm thinking of the Disney movie about Mary Poppins, about finding Mr. Banks, I believe it is, and I'm thinking that's where this is all going. This is all just confusing the origin story of Mary Poppins with Bugs Bunny
Oh, okay. I
And the
got it.
Beverly Hillbillies.
and the Beverly Hillbillies. Yeah,
Right. Bob
Beverly
Clampett.
Hillbillies had Jed and Jethro, so not Bob
Clampett.
Clampett. Yes.
Clampett.
Clampett. That is a
Bob-
name.
was the
People do
cousin.
have that last name.
Some
cousin
people
Bob.
do.
Yes.
All right, Darren,
Like
you're
Bob
gonna get
Clampett.
Bob Clampett. Yeah,
Bob, like Bob.
I think Jethro is also Foghorn.
he was
Leghorn's
edited
middleman.
out in the '80s.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, they green screen him out.
Yeah,
Because he tried to commit suicide on screen.
with a handgun. Yeah.
Forbade.
Do you guys
Oh,
not
man.
remember that from old cartoons? The handgun suicides? That
I
would be
do.
Such a See,
I
Adam
love old
remembers. I'm not
Oh,
crazy.
Adam, you're not allowed to give, like, I
Well,
don't know.
no, I'm not talking about his. Hold on, I'm not talking about his
Yeah,
story.
I'm
in
not
particular.
saying my
Uh,
particular
I'm
episode,
talking
but, like,
about,
that is
like,
a thing.
No, like Tom and
From-
Jerry, there was a ton of
Yeah.
gun violence. Looney Tunes did have violence. Some of the super old, like off-brand, non-Mickey Disney stuff had crazy violence.
Dear censors,
So-
clearly this didn't land for me, so maybe you're wrong about
Okay.
stuff being too violent on TV.
Well,
Yeah.
speaking of 1920s and 1930s racism
Okay.
and things that shouldn't be on TV, I
No,
have
we weren't
the
talking about
finish
that.
to my story.
Oh yes, Darren should finish his story. Let's go back to
Yay.
Darren now.
What?
Let's get Darren's
What is-
Darren's entry for third round.
Yeah, what a smooth and unclunky segue. That was perfect.
great.
So much. Gina.
It's
I appreciate it.
if only the host me could have been that smooth. Darren, your round
Man.
3 begins right now.
So, ironically, I think the best advice that we could give to whomever this person was who asked for Hop on Pop to be banned actually comes from another Dr. Seuss book that was actually banned. In 2021, I don't know if you remember this, 6 of Seuss's earliest books were retired because it was felt that they contained imagery that was racist and outdated. And to be fair, we're talking about books that are now 100 years old, Seuss's earliest works, and times have changed a lot. And one of those books is about a boy named Marco who, shall we say, exaggerates a bit. And the book was called And to Think I Saw It on Mulberry Street. In the book, Marco's father says, "Your eyesight's much too keen. Stop telling such outlandish tales. Stop turning minnows into whales."
Okay. That's a good tight ending with the round. You closed in pentameter, so I appreciate that immensely. Gina,
You're
you
welcome.
have something to say. I can see that you're
The
chomping at the bit.
reason I'm making so many faces is I'm trying to figure out what was the part of that was racist. I don't know. I really don't.
That statement wasn't, but the book's a little racist. I actually read it
Oh,
really?
you did?
Okay.
And it is? Oh, okay. Well,
a little bit.
Okay.
right,
On behalf
well.
of all the people who have experienced racism, I apologize for Dr. Seuss.
Well, we'll have to review that on our History Bluffs literary review show. Totally.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
Coming
Alan,
soon to a theater near you.
Alan, thoughts?
I think Darren sandwiched in a bunch of facts,
Yes.
right? Hop on Pop is a book. The Mulberry Street book is a book. But whether or not the Hop on Pop was banned in Canadian library or attempted, it didn't even get banned. But whether or not it was attempted to get banned because of supposed cartoonish violence, that could be completely made up. So I'm skeptical about that one piece of his story.
Let's see.
Just
Cartoonish
one?
violence. Wow. So
Yeah,
Just
the books
one,
exist.
Alan?
Hop on Pop really exists, is
yeah,
what
Okay.
I'm saying.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay. All right. So that brings us through that. So there's only one thing to do left in round 3, and that's to get Gina up here to close out your story
Okay.
on your round 3, which begins right now.
Okay, so when Hank Williams Jr. brought it to Nashville, he actually hooked up with an audio recorder who said, I have an idea. And what they did was they laid down Hank Williams Jr. singing it. At the same time, they simultaneously played Hank Williams playing it, and they actually created a duet with father and son singing together. Hank Williams Jr. died when when he was only 3 years old. His father died, and so the odds of them ever performing together were nil until that moment. So they actually created the song together. It rose to number 7 on the charts, but then they made a video together where they took old footage of Hank Williams and they put it of him playing guitar and singing, and they placed it with Hank Williams Jr. right beside him singing, and that's when the song went up to the number 1 in the charts. Very cool.
Wow.
Nobody died except for Hank Williams. I
Well,
suppose, but that was inevitable.
The inevitable, right? So, okay, all right, good close out to that story. That's very
Thank
sweet.
you.
Alan, did you find that as sweet as I did?
It was sweet when Natalie Cole did it.
What? Natalie Cole did it? I didn't know
No.
this.
Remember that from the 90s? She sang
No.
Unforgettable with her father, Nat King Cole.
Ho!
I didn't
This
forget.
happened in 1988.
Oh,
I don't know.
it happened first? That's
Yeah.
interesting. So it inspired Natalie Cole to sing Unforgettable with
Maybe.
Nat King Cole in a video, mind you, that also charted. I don't know if it made it to number 1, but it was a high charting single. Natalie Cole,
Ooh.
yes.
Well, I don't know.
All right. Darren, where are you at with this?
I'm with Alan on this. I remember the Unforgettable video and the duet with her father. And if that didn't go to number 1, I can't imagine the Hank Williams Jr. Sr. thing doing it.
Have you ever heard this song? It's fantastic. There's a tear in my beer because I'm crying for you, dear. You are on my lonely mind.
It's
beautiful.
forgettable.
It's forgettable.
So says the storyteller, who could be truth or bluff.
That's what it is.
Oh my
It's
God.
forgettable.
All right. Well, thanks for that input. And look at this. Our dots are full on the round tracker 9000 above me, which means all 3 historians have said something to their story to complete it for 3 rounds, and they are finished telling their stories. So what we're going to do before the big reveal is we're going to give you, we're going to go around the horn here, and I want each of you to give your thoughts about who might be bluffing and cast a final accusation before the end of the game. And Alan, I'm going to start with you. Who
Oh, wow.
do you think is the bluff?
So I don't know enough about country music to know whether or not Gina is making up the story. I mean, it's way too obvious to sound like the Natalie Cole story for me to think that she would just be inspired by the Natalie Cole story. But then again, maybe she was. I don't know. But see, Darren, it's more like the typical History Bluffs thing where we just kind of like have the crux of the story be the bluff. So I'm thinking maybe no one tried to ban Hop on Pop for violence. So I'm going to say it's Darren.
All right, vote cast for Darren. All right, so, Darren, your name is up, so let's go to you. Darren, where's your thoughts?
In a similar vein, Alan's story is quite believable. It's just like, well, yeah, this guy who happened to be hanging around the studio inspired Mel Blanc to do the voice, and he heard it and he did it, and that makes perfect sense. Whereas Gina requires all of these coincidences to have happened in sequence, and somebody found a record in an attic and it's still played, and it's so impossible that it can't possibly be true, so it must be true, and so therefore Alan is just making this up. It sounds perfectly plausible, but it's not.
Okay, vote cast for Alan. Alan, Darren has countercasted you. So, Gina, that leaves you. No one's voted for you. So, if you are the bluff, you get away scot-free.
No, but that just really, really was toying with my emotions there, Darren. I was like, oh, man. Okay, so I will tell you this. Every time Darren has done a poem, I think his stories have been true. And then I also don't believe that Canadians would ban anything. So,
and they didn't. In the story, they did not ban it.
Well, okay, fair. But they tried. Good try, Alan, though. But I'm still voting for you because I don't believe that Bugs Bunny sounded like Woody Woodpecker. But I don't really know. So this is a great show because this is very fun. I'm not really sure.
Wow. All right, the votes are cast. Alan votes for Darren. Darren votes for Alan. Gina votes for Alan, which means if Gina was the bluff, she wins scot-free, completely out the gate. If Darren is the bluff, then he has one vote cast against him, and he did not get away scot-free. And Alan, if you're bluffing, you have 2 votes against you. You fooled no one. So let's find out how it works. So I'm going to jump out of the video here, and I'm going to line up the bluffers or historian truthers and ask the big question: was your bluff Alan, or was your bluff Darren, or could your bluff have been Gina? Prepare yourself for the big reveal. Your bluff this whole time, it was Alan. He fooled
no one whatsoever.
But man, that was great. I loved it because I am actually a huge Bugs Bunny fan, and I'll be straight. Like, I mean, you could have, if you look at the oldest Bugs Bunny cartoons, like he's drawn weird, he talks weird.
He is.
So it was a very believable story, close to a lot of truth.
Yes, all the
But
stuff.
yeah.
What's that? All the stuff that you didn't think was true was in fact true. There was a Bob Clampett.
He's my favorite Looney Tunes director, as a matter of fact.
Well, see, you know who that was. Good.
I know. I couldn't say during the before.
I know.
the
No.
reveal. I love the Bob Clampett
Abiding
ones.
by the rules. What was the other thing you guys thought was fake?
Oh, well, the tortoise and the hare suicide thing.
That was also true. That was absolutely
Really?
true. Yes. And yes, the early voice of Bugs Bunny sounded like the early voice of Woody Woodpecker, not the final voice
Oh, okay.
of Woody Woodpecker. As you might not know, the original voice of Woody Woodpecker was in fact done by Mel Blanc and was later done by other voice actors. But I will also say that I ran out of time before I gave some of Mel Blanc's resume. Outside of all the male Looney Tune characters, as you're all probably aware of, he also did the voice of Heathcliff the Cat, Hanna-Barbera characters like Speed Buggy, Mr. Spacely, George Jetson's boss,
I didn't know
Barney
that.
Rubble. He was Barney Rubble, and that also was a voice that changed. In the early Flintstones, his voice was different, but it was always Mel Blanc. And Dino, their pet, and some others that I'm sure I left out. But I will tell you what I was bluffing about.
Yes. What was it that you
yes.
tried to pass as truth that was bluff?
All right, Happy Rabbit was never the title of an animation, but Mel Blanc does claim it was the working name for Bugs before he was being named on screen. And Ben Bugs Hardaway was Bunny's original animator / writer, who does get credit for being the naming inspiration for Bugs Bunny. And Bugs Bunny's full name is George Washington Bunny, which was the inspiration for my fake character of George Washington Banks.
Thanks. Oh, that was good.
Okay, so you
I didn't know
scrambled up
his
the
real
names
name.
and okay.
Sorry, Alan. I mean, Adam.
Yeah, so you scrambled up the names and you changed the inspirations.
Yes.
If
Okay.
you haven't watched the tortoise and the hare one, is really funny though. Like
Oh, it's great. It's great.
great.
It is a great
Yes.
karma thing. So, all right, let's go before we close out here. So, Darren, this Hop on Pop is a true story. This really
It is
happened.
Absolutely true. Not only Hop on Pop, they objected to a story called a book called Killing Kennedy that was written by Bill O'Reilly because it came to the conclusion that Kennedy was killed by a lone gunman, not by a conspiracy of people.
Wow.
And also a book about a girl who has a pet lion who eats a burglar to save her from the burglar. And they thought, well, that's pretty violent that the pet lion saved the child. And so they said, well, that's too violent. You shouldn't be teaching that to children.
Wow.
Yeah. People, this is why we don't have universal health care in America. Because once you have universal health care, look at how much time you have on your hands to do things like this.
Way too much.
I love that I love that, because it's so easy to get a lion in your home to protect you. It's like, that's what they're concerned about.
Yeah.
It's the dangers among us.
Mm-hmm. It's the real dangers among us, the legitimate we could get.
Yeah.
That's what they worry about in Toronto.
I guess so.
Life is easy in Toronto, I guess. Gina, your story to close us out here. So this was a real story, the Hank Williams Jr. How come we haven't heard of this song? I mean, it just might didn't come up on my radar.
It is an old song because Bill Lister did record it, but they did the duet with it later in the 80s. And I remember hearing it because I grew up I came from New York, but when we moved down here, I moved to sort of a very small town, like just a small town. And they played a lot of country music. And that was one of the ones they played all the time. I actually didn't know the story about it, though, until I just so happened I was looking up stuff about beer for this particular episode. And that was a great story. I was like, oh, there it is. That was fun.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. So now I've learned about that. So the Hank Williams and his junior duet predates the other one we mentioned, which was Banana.
Yeah.
Cole and Nat King Cole.
That's right.
Yeah, that's cool. And they said that I guess Hank Williams Jr. and Bill Lister, the two of them used to do songs together, but neither one of them could read or write music. So they often had to do it by ear. So when Hank Williams laid that down for him, he was just doing it so that Bill could record it. And Bill lost it or thought he did, and he didn't realize he packed it up. He didn't, So when they came across it, I think it was this was 53, I think, or 51, and so it was 88. So how many, like 50 years later, or whatever it is. Can't do math right now.
That's amazing.
30 something years. And and then just the fact that I would have thought it was great if somebody had presented me with that for my dead father. I thought that was really pretty.
Well, no wonder there were tears. I'll tell you what.
Beers.
I'm dead in my
Tears and beers.
murdered. As far as I know.
No murders this week. Maybe next week, Gina. But hey, Thank you very much for your contribution for history. Darren, thank you for shedding some light on some wonderful facts from history. Alan, better luck next time. Maybe your bluff will get the wool over the eyes. We'll see. Thank you all for being a part of this episode of History Bluffs, where truth is stranger than fiction every week, streaming on Wednesdays. Catch us where you get your audio podcasts as well. See you next time.